Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining in today. I am Aditya. I am one of the coaches here at MLH from India, and I am so happy to be here with you all. I hope you've all been having fun so far. With 3 days into local hack day, there's definitely some great activities happening here, and I've had my eye out, and I'm honestly loving the sort of activity we've had all of this while. So I'll tell you what, we can probably take a few minutes just saying hi, what's up. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, sure, go ahead, do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to bring up the link for you to check in to this event that we have here today, so that we can get our entry in for well the leaderboard. So I am just bringing up my link here right now. Just give me a second, please. Just just bringing up my screen. Okay, I'm almost ready. So here I am sharing my screen. There we go. So the first thing to make sure is that you're actually checked in to to Global Hack Week. I'm so sorry. I keep having that slip of tongue every once in a while. Yeah, first thing to make sure is to ensure that you're checked into Global Hack Week here, and I've sent in the link for that. Once you're checked in, you should see a message that says you are checked in. After that, we're just going to go and scroll down and go to day three. You have to do exactly the same thing here. Make sure that you register and check in to this. I'm going to send in this link here as well. Third step, last but not the least, is to make sure you're checked into this event. So what you have to do is, as I mentioned, go ahead and click on register and check in, and you should be good to go. If you're registered already but not checked in, you'll see a message just to check in there. So it's one and the same thing. Don't worry too much about it, but make sure that you're fully checked into this event. All right. I'm sending in the link here, and you all should be good to go on this point. Right. So that's the registration and check-in method here for you all. Um, that's still pretty straightforward, so it should be comfortable, convenient. I hope. Yeah. Now, today's session is one that I've personally been very excited about, because it's about a piece of tech that I personally love to work with, and this technology is called an API. I just love working with APIs, and I've been building APIs for the last couple of years or so now, but definitely it's a wonderful piece of tech, and I'm grateful to be able to share this at this stage here. So what I'm going to do with the session today is that I'll first talk a little about what APIs are, maybe share a reference with you all, so that you can go ahead, read a little more as well. That should definitely help a little. And after that, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna see how you can consume APIs, right? And then we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna try using a couple of APIs and an SDK as well. So few terms there, but I hope it's comfortable. And also, at any point, in case you have any doubts, please let them come into the chat. I would be happy to take them up and discuss them with you all for sure. So don't worry too much about it. Okay, just feel free to throw your questions in. Also, just one more thing. So because I'm on two displays for the better part, I'm just gonna do one thing and shift my StreamYard here at the right side. So basically, if I'm looking this side, all it means is that I'm looking at StreamYard and at the chat. All right, because I'm going to be working with my primary display here. So that's just a note I wanted to get in before anything else. All right. Now, Let me look at the chat and see if there are any queries or any points so far. All right, I see one message about timeline difference. So the first little thing about Global Hack Week is that you don't have to put the pressure on attending every single event at all points of time. You can go ahead, you can look at recordings. All of these events are recorded and available on the MLH YouTube, so you can always go ahead and look at them there, because we we're basically running these activities all around the world, right? So uh, I can understand chances are for some activities it might just fall at a time when you're asleep or at college, but please bear with us. We're trying to ensure that everyone has access to some events, and since all the content is accessible later on, it's actually it's all accessible even right now. Any piece, any event that has happened so far throughout Global Hack Week, any session that has happened is already accessible. So on our YouTube, so you can always go ahead and check it out there. Now, I think first things first, since we've mentioned APIs and we've talked about APIs, and that's a little term, it's there in the title as well. Let's actually discuss what an API is. So before before I start sharing, would anyone like to kind of jump on and maybe tell in the chat if you know what an API is? Anyone? I see one message there. Application programming interface. That's definitely the full form, right? Um, Good one. Good input there for sure. Anyone else want to add as well? No. All right. It's totally all right. Nothing to really worry about. Oh, I see. We've got a couple of inputs here. Yash mentions an API is a pre-made code module that we can reuse. It's kind of there, almost there. Um, Linking applications together, definitely that's a part of the purpose of APIs for sure. Um, Connects app to the server. That's partially all right. Um, but good input. I know typically when you're using a web-based API that tends to happen, but just a hint: APIs don't necessarily have to be web-based. So that's there. Yeah, that's how you connect and exchange data with other people's code. Basically, good answers. Definitely, we've got some people who are aware of what APIs are. That's awesome. So an API or an application programming interface, it essentially is a software intermediary. It's a piece of software that lets two different applications talk to each other. That's what APIs let you do. So, for example, it's basically an interface that connects two pieces of software. You could have one software here, one software here, and the API is the layer in the middle that allows these two to communicate essentially. And when we talk about examples, let's say Instagram or Twitter. Whenever you post a tweet, you write your tweet content and you press on the tweet button. What happens is that Twitter's API kicks in and publishes it, to the application. So an API is being triggered there as well, which is why you and that API is allows you to work with different types of clients, which is why you can work with Twitter from your mobile app or from the web app, right? So there's an API in the middle there. Another example of something of an API that isn't server based could be, so if you're building an Android app, right, and you want to work with Android's own underlying system, maybe for example. So there tends to be an API available there for you to work with the underlying system at that point. Windows has an API similarly, in case you want to work with system level resources. So APIs are an interface for, it doesn't have to just be server based, but yes, it can be. And a lot of times web APIs are, on that note, it was definitely a good point to mention that, it lets you connect with a server. So yeah, that's APIs for you. And there are different ways of communicating with APIs. One, of course, if you're sending in data, one way is, of course, JSON, which, as I see Mansi has mentioned here, JSON's definitely one way to go about it. But there are a few other ways to communicate as well. For example, XML. XML is one way of going about it. Your um, you know it the sort of the way you communicate with the API is, you could just have HTML form data, information straight from HTML forms. That could be a way to communicate. So there are a few different kinds of ways by which you can communicate. JSON is a common standard, but it isn't the only one. There are a few other ways by which you can go about it. So that's a little bit about APIs. I'm going to send in a link or two that lets you know and understand and learn a little about what an API is, what an example of an API could be. Let me throw that link in. This is available off a Google search. To be honest, if you want to search, and you can find other resources. I've shared one with you, which definitely looked interesting. So do check it out for sure. Okay. Now, with this the workshop, with the session we have here today, it's all about connecting two APIs together, right? We want to connect. We want to build a software that can communicate with an API or so. So I'll tell you what. We will build a fun little application, and we'll create. Let's create, like, okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a word of the day um, l- application, and when I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create this for Azure Functions, because I want to create a serverless function that can text me the word of the day and its definition every single day. So maybe we'll do definition, maybe not. That's all right. But let's create a word of the day application. How does that sound? Sounds interesting? Let me know in the chat if that sounds good. Otherwise, we can always think about other ideas as well. Folks, let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'll take that. And if there's silence, I'll take that as a yes. So sounds about right. Awesome. Great. That's lovely. So I kind of came prepared for this one. Just the idea of having a word of the day API. So I've actually got a couple of APIs in mind that we can play around with. But there's one little thing that's going to be different from what the title of the session goes. Instead of using two APIs, I'm thinking we might as well try three. Yeah, yeah. So I'll tell you what. I'll just share my screen now once again and tell you what APIs I'm going to be using for my word of the day application, and the different technologies I'll be playing around with. So I'm just going to get these open ones on my system, and we can go ahead after that. I guess my screen should be good to go now. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, Azure Functions, I'm going to be using Azure Functions, and that's where I'll be deploying my application, the one that I built. And I'm going to be running this on a timer, right? Because for a word of the day, we want something that can keep messaging us every single day, right? At maybe a specific time or so. So I'm going to be using Azure Functions to go ahead and to create a serverless function for myself, and I will be using the random word API that I found from a Google search, honestly, to get a random word back. I'll be using this API here that exists to get a random word back, and then I'll be sending that word into this dictionary API here that's available to get the meaning of that, and then I will be sending the word and the meaning to my phone as an SMS using Twilio. So we're going to be using the Twilio SDK here to connect with Twilio's messaging API. So this is some fun stuff that we're going to do. Definitely interesting, I hope. And I honestly pray it works. That's my big worry. Uh, but yeah, we're going to have fun, right? So just another note to point out, I'm going to be using functions to build my little application, but I want you all to focus and understand and see how APIs can be consumed and how they let us get information, right? That's the priority to understand. So don't worry too much about the platform, because we're learning more about APIs and the concept of that. And and another note is that you can use these APIs or another one to build whatever you like. That is not a mandate that you have to follow exactly what I'm doing here, because I'm going to be using .NET and C Sharp along with Azure Functions. If you want to build something with JavaScript, Python, Java, anything else you like, please go ahead and do that. You don't have to take too much pressure about following this exactly to spec. This is just a demonstration of how you can play around with a few different APIs. All right. So yeah, I think we're all set and we can go ahead. Sounds good. All right, let's go. So first things first, we wanna if you're going ahead and you're building an Azure function and you want to play with .NET, a few things you need on your system are, of course, well, .NET, the .NET SDK, which you can actually download by going to .NET, convenient, and then you can go ahead and download the SDK from this website here, right? When I go to .NET, you can find download there. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to be reinstalling it, but you can follow the same method to do that. Secondly, for Azure Functions, um, we're going to be using VS Code, and VS Code has an extension to build Azure Functions, which you can download from the extension store. Thirdly, though, one more thing you do need to build and debug Azure Functions locally are Azure Functions core tools. Okay, so if you search Azure Functions core tools, you should be able to find this website on the Microsoft Docs, and it allows you to install from here. This is going to be mandatory if you want to debug Azure Functions on your own system. If you don't, then you're okay. But typically, if you're building, it's recommended to have it downloaded, right? So make sure to download Azure Functions core tools, because because this is what has the runtime that powers Azure Functions, and you're gonna need this if you want to go ahead and work with functions locally. Secondly, what we're gonna do is, now that I've talked about functions and how to set those up, I'm gonna bring up VS Code, because that's gonna be my editor of preference for this activity, right? Now, as I mentioned, we've got a function for Azure Functions, and you can see it's visible here. Even if not, you can just search it up there. You need to install this function. This is because honestly, if you're working with VS Code, this is gonna make your life really really easy. And yes, Azure Functions is the serverless application solution that Azure has. So we're going to be playing around with this throughout. And uh, yeah, that happens from time to time. Seems like there's a little VS Code error that I'm facing with loading web views. I'll tell you what, let me just go ahead and bring back Visual Studio Code once again. Yep, that loads it. So That's basically the details of the Azure Functions extension. It shows how you can access the tooling, which I have installed, so I can, I've got functions right here. Another little quick word is, so you can build functions locally on your system. If you want to deploy them, however, you will need an Azure subscription, but you don't need one to build them locally. So you should be all right on that note. Okay. Now, like I said, Azure here is a system that I'm going to be using and I want to build my application with. For now, the priority though would be to understand how APIs work, so you don't need to worry too much about it. All right. And yeah, you don't need to worry a lot about Azure in this session. Anything that we need to build this application, I'll be live demoing anyway. So you should be okay to go on that. And no, Azure is not mandatory to work with APIs in general. It's only that here the application we're building, which will where we're calling these APIs that I've talked about. I'm just going to be using Azure Functions as my application platform for that. But you can honestly call APIs with any language that I mean most languages, if not all. In fact, I tell you what, before we start building, the APIs, the random word API and the dictionary API that I have, let me show you how this would just work in Postman as well. Postman here is a little platform that allows you to play around with APIs and try them and test them out on your system. Alternatives to this are hopscotch, or if you've got a bash shell, um, or even on Windows, you can just install curl and work with curl as well. So you should to try out APIs in your terminal. So these are a few different tools by which you can just check out APIs if you'd like. I like working with Postman, so I'm going to show you what would happen if we send a request to this API here that I'm talking about constantly. So we see that what we want to do here is send a get request. I'm going to get into what get means and whether there are any alternatives to this as well. Um, as I get to Postman, that might make it a little easier to show what I'm trying to talk about here. Okay. So when we talk about creating HTTP requests to APIs, what happens here is that that there are different types of requests you can make. Um, the different types of requests that we have are and what these basically are requests to access a resource on a server or to perform a certain um, operation, right? We send HTTP requests from the client and we get a response from the server as we send these requests. So HTTP requests really work on a client server model sort of format where you're sending a request to one entity and getting it back from another. And an HTTP request would typically contain a request line that is, your path. You could have a series of different headers, different fields like what your response type is or anything you need for authentication, and a message body if need be. So there's a few different things you could have there, right? And when we go ahead and talk about types of HTTP requests, we've got a few different types. The most common ones are get, post, put, patch, and delete. And these typically correspond to your uh, read, create, update, delete operations. These are conventional HTTP request methods, and most applications, most APIs would feature one of these. So that's a little about what HTTP requests are. I don't need this lesson for now. I do know how to work with Postman. Postman here is a client that lets you work with and test APIs. That's what Postman does. Let me zoom in a little. This should make it a little easier to understand and see. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add that API we were looking at, and what this is gonna do here is, looking at the format we had in that API here, right, where number is the number of words returned. What we're gonna do is we're gonna send a GET request as mentioned, as specified here, and we'll get back a single word. So ideally, that's how this should work. Now, let's hope that that's what happens. Honestly, with software, that's always the thing. So we're sending a request. And looks like we got back a response. We've got a word, a random word, conforms. So the API works. Let's see what happens if we change that number and we can make it 5. We get 5 different words. So yeah, the API definitely works. And fun thing about this API is you can actually get all the list of all random words that this API has. Right. So we sent the request from here, and just saying we can look at the response we got, the response body, any headers it sent along. We didn't have tests here, but that's okay. We got the status of the request. So since it's a successful request, we got a 200 OK status. There are a few different codes like these that you can look up that we can talk about. In fact, so if suppose I send the request for all the 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 words on this API, we should be able to get a response here because as we saw this API's documentation, there is an endpoint here for all. There is an endpoint for a single word or a number of words that you can choose, and we've got an endpoint for all the words we want. And fun thing, there's actually a swear filter as well, which we can probably add on the next attempt. But yeah, this one's gonna take a little while. Can probably assuming it's quite a big list. It's Ashwin here. Hi Ashwin, thank you so much for joining in. But please don't put yourself into academic trouble for for the workshop. You can always follow along whenever you want into any trouble for this. But thank you so much for joining in. Sheesh, this is a big one. It's gonna take a little while. I'll tell you what, I'll cancel it for now because I can assume this is a big request and definitely quite the word list. But in the meantime, I'll tell you what. Let's try a few things. Now, whenever we make a request, and this is what we often do is we've got an endpoint here. We've got and we can add certain query parameters we want, which are values we send back through the get request URL. So if suppose I add um, the number of words we wanted, and we had that sphere filter that I talked about earlier, right? So we get back, well, a response here. Similarly, you can choose the parameters you want. um, Always just make sure of one thing. uh, Always make sure that you're following along the the instructions in the documentation here, right? Because if suppose I send it to a parameter that doesn't exist, for example num, you'll get an error back because this is an unknown argument, and you'll get a bad request error. So always make sure you're following the instructions, right? Like just how we had the parameter. Similarly, if it's an endpoint that doesn't exist, we'll get another error back. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you're following these instructions. That one works. I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead. I'm gonna create my function and we'll code this function in before we hop over and we try out the next API that we had for meanings, right? So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna create a new folder for us. We'll call it GHW share API. I'm with Azure Functions, we've got different languages. As I said, you can use whatever language you want. That's totally an option. I just want to work with C sharp, so that's my preference. But you can go ahead with whatever you like. And since I'm building a little app that sends me a random word of the day, we're gonna keep it a timer trigger function. And I'm gonna call this function random word. Namespace we can let be as is. Now this is the cron expression that we have. Um, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead. For now, I will leave it at start because when I'm testing this, I wanna see if I'm getting a response. So this should give me a response um, every minute. So yeah, every minute at 0 seconds. That's what it should give me. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna try this out, and later on we can always change this. Um, you know. So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's do that. And yeah, for Azure Functions, I need a storage account. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna create a storage account. GHW share. Create a new resource group for us. Now this is a very Azure thing. Not something you need to worry too much about. Central India for now, and I want to open this in my current account. Arpan, we're really just yeah. Oh, hi. We're just getting started, so don't need to worry too much. So we're actually setting up the little Azure function that I was creating, and let's see. Let's wait. Let's check out the chat in the meantime. Functions created. Nice. So, if you remember, we did see a few different options earlier, right? We saw a timer trigger. We saw the name of the function we wanted. You can find those details here as well, right? So, as you can see, this should be a good enough. This is the most basic timer trigger function, and I'll tell you what. If I go ahead and I run this, right? If I run this, let's see what happens. Is it not installed? I did install it. Oh, interesting. It's just gonna install functions for me. Oh, is that the case? I was not sure of that. I'm just running it locally on VS Code. That's what I'm doing for now. Ideally, it should be all right though. I mean, if you're having too much trouble, can you try and see if you're able to access GitHub code spaces? If you can access that, it should work all right there. Um, but yeah, this is interesting. I'll tell you what, if this creates too much trouble, I'll just go ahead and run it in a console app and oh, looks like we're good to go. So it seems like it's building and this is just gonna start this function. So what this function is gonna do is every single minute, it will just print out the time at the moment in our console. So if this works for every minute, we should be good to go. All right. So I'm gonna wait for a bit and see what happens. As this runs, and if this runs, at least we know that our timer trigger function is working. So we can then build out the rest of the app, and it should work. Oh, is that the case with code spaces? I legitimately had no idea. Oh, all right. So ideally, as far as this goes, in another 20 seconds or so, we should see a trigger for us. Let's see what happens. Let's see if this works out. I really hope it works out. Yeah. So we did see the function being triggered. We saw that we got the output. So great, it works. Awesome. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna stop this for now. All right. But now we know that our function works. We can continue going ahead, and we can just build it out. All right. So I'm gonna remove the. Actually, I'll tell you what. I'll keep this for now. We'll go ahead and build ahead of this. Right. So whenever we work with a language, typically each language has a library to connect and work with and send HTTP requests across the internet, which is what we need. In C sharp, the library, the class that we have is called HTTP client. And yeah, so using this library, we can actually go ahead and send HTTP requests across the internet whenever we want. This initializes a little HTTP client for us, and this client will let us send get requests, post requests, whatever type we want, which works well for us because we do want to do that, right? So I am just gonna, well, let me save the API that we're calling, the URL for that in the little string, and I'm gonna call that random word API. All right, and I've got that saved here. So since we're getting this exact this little we're hitting this exact same URL every single time, it's all right. We can let this be as is. With the definition, though, I know we're gonna have to customize that. So we're gonna play around a little more with APIs and with C sharp, of course, as we get there. But in the meantime, let me go ahead and create a response for the random word API. So I'm just gonna copy this for a second. In in C sharp, we've got a few different response types, but in all honesty, why do I want to worry about that when we've got var? So I'm just going to go ahead and add var. And what we're going to do is we're going to send an HTTP, a GET request to this API that we have, right? And what this will be is a type of HTTP response message. So if we want to get the random, if we want to get the random word back, where random word. After that, what we need to do is we need to read this type and get the object out of it. Now, what this line is very specific to C sharp, and what it does is it lets us get the object we got out of the HTTP response message. Um, so yeah, let me go ahead and do that. I'm looking at the chat. We're seeing a little discussion. I am so sorry about that. Let me go ahead and I think that should make it a little easier to read. I hope this helps. And yeah, this is C sharp and .NET. C sharp uses the .NET SDK. So I'm working with C Sharp right now. The syntax is very similar to Java, so that's a good catch. Honestly, uh, no worries. It's totally all right. It does look very similar to Java. If I was looking at this code for the very first time, chances are I'd be confused as well. Because well, I started working with Java back in school, so that happens. Nothing to worry about. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I wanna read the content that we have here, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna read the content and just gonna leave this as dynamic. What this is gonna do is, because for now I'm just treating it as having a schema that I'm not sure of. In truth, though, we do, so I could actually just well save this as is, but for now I'll just leave that be, so we can play around with well, random word later on. Let me go ahead and log this information again, right? And we're gonna try this out and see what happens, what response we get. So with log information, just gonna go ahead and with random word, we're gonna convert this. Tell you what, we should deserialize this. We should just get a string out of this. So I'm just gonna get a string out of here. Um, I call it log just for the sake of it. Um, what I'm doing here is I am adding a library that will actually just serialize this object I have and give me the string for that. That's all we're doing. So it's nothing too much to worry about. Okay. Seems like I'm getting a little error here. Um, let me just check the documentation for serializing, because this ideally shouldn't be a big issue by any means. Oh, that was just the name log. Never mind. We should be good. Let me just the string, and I'm gonna keep log response here because I wanna see what response we actually get. This piece of line, it just converts that object we get into uh well just a string. That's all, like that's all we're doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna oops, never mind. Sorry about that. Function F5. That that should be the one. Yeah. My bad on that. I see. Let's just thing around working with asynchronous tasks and functions here in C sharp. Nothing too much to worry about. Oh, Okay, so we are getting back, well, a function here. And great, great. Okay, so it seems like we're getting back the response, and I'll tell you what. Seems like this is an entire list that we're getting from the way I see it. So I'm just gonna make a little check for us because I just want to see if there's a list format. So just for a second, since this is the first time I'm working with this I want to make sure that that's not an issue I'm getting stuck with. So if suppose I go ahead and I run this again, would this be the same response I get? Would I get just about? Let's see. Let's figure this out. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That works. What we were getting back is an entire is just a list of words. So we can get the word out of our list now, and that should have us sorted. So that's how we worked with this API. Now I'm gonna call this random word, and I'm gonna comment this out for a little bit because we don't need this for now. All right. We can actually keep this a separate function, but I'll tell you what. Let's not worry too much about it. Just gonna create a little separation this way for now. Now let's go back. We've got a random word from the random word API, but we were gonna get the meaning of it as well, right? And for that, I found this free dictionary API that we have. Um, let's see, do we have any other dictionary APIs that we can work with as well? We've got the Oxford Dictionaries API for sure. We could check that out as well once if we like. Hmm. So, if suppose we try out the word manage, we get the definition of it. We've actually got. Uh, okay, nice. Yeah, we've got codes for it as well. For now, this seems to be like just a quicker API to work with, so I'm gonna play with this for now. All right, because with this, it's a free API, and I don't want to create too much worry about a key and handling all of that. So we'll just go ahead. We'll try out this API for now, but later on, if we want to switch and swap over, we can do that if we have the time for it. So I wanted to try this API once. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's take the word tolls and we'll send it in. So as per this API, the word goes in here at the end, right? And so this is the endpoint, the rest of the endpoint that we have, and it's taking in the input word here. So I'm gonna send in a get request and let's see if we get a response back. We couldn't find. Wow. Okay. Oh, interesting. Suppose we send in manage. That has a word that's available, and we have a definition for it as well. So tell you what, let's see what would happen if we'd send this over to the Oxford Dictionaries API. Because if that works, then we might as well play around with that once. we were getting a response here. So in that case, I think we can try out the Oxford API, dictionaries API instead. And it does seem like we have a developer and a prototype and a free access um, tool as well. So let me tell you what, I'll fill this up once just because I want to do that. But we're going to be connecting two APIs here. We'll be getting the information from the first one and sending that into the second. So you'll get to see two APIs connect on that note. We'll add a little third one as well into the play. So let me just go ahead and register this. And in the meantime, if you have any queries, throw those in, please. I'll take a minute here now to kind of try out, and understand and see what's going on. We will be inputting into the second API. That's what I was saying. We'll be doing that. All right. It seems like I'll get an email from them. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep an eye out on my email. Oh, I see. Um, I might have some trouble here, at least until I deploy. I really hope that isn't the case. But I can't find. Okay, there's the documentation. Whenever you're working with APIs, it's always a good idea to have a look at the documentation once to understand what they're trying to achieve. Because, well, I was looking and it was asking for an application URL, meaning I might need to send in, well, and, have it deployed at a specific link later on. But I'll tell you what, I'll try this out in Postman and see if this works. And if it does, we can go ahead and we can try it out. So let me. Just gonna go here. Separate word. So I'm gonna try out their little API once and see if this works for us. And if it does, we can go ahead and we can try out. In the headers, we'll need to add an app ID as well as an app key. And that's why we had to go ahead and register. That's because For now, I'll just end up showing my ID and key. It's okay for now, I guess. I can always reset it later when I want. Just make sure you don't add those to your code. Never a good idea to have those in your code. So if suppose I send a request here, seems like I get back a response. So it actually shouldn't be a worry. If I add the word here that we had, toes, let's see if we get a response. And toe gets a response, toes didn't. Sheesh. Okay. So I mean, we are getting a response from this API for sure. So I tell you what, let's go ahead. Let's work with this. Let's work with the Oxford Dictionaries API for now. So we've got our API endpoint here, and I want to keep the language consistent at English. I don't want to go ahead have something else. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use this endpoint straight up. I'm gonna call it Oxford Dictionary API. I'm gonna leave it at that for now. Okay. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add my app ID here as well. On more ideal terms, it's always good to not keep your ID and key here in your code. It's always a good idea to keep it in environment variable instead. With functions, you can do that using local settings. Um, this file is here for that purpose, and then at the same time, you can always wherever you've got your API deployed, save files, save those values in the environment, and not keep them in your code. That's a good practice. For now, though, just from a learning standpoint, we should be okay. So I will let that slide for now. Yeah, you can always make without Azure. That's just my preferred tech, but you don't have to exactly follow along everything I'm doing. This is just a way by which we're gonna be, um, you know, we'll by which we will be kind of connecting to APIs. Just two APIs that I want. You can build whatever you want. Actually, we had to add the random word here anyway, right? So let me go ahead and actually I'll do that right now. I'll add random word, and we want to make sure it's too lower because that's what the Oxford API wants, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and I will do that. I will make sure that we've got this here as a lowered, um, you know just making sure that it's lowered. The other thing we need to do is we want to make sure that our app ID, um, it, and our API key are added to our headers as well, right? That is what the expectation was. So we need to add two custom headers to this HTTP client that we have here. The good thing though is we can actually add whatever custom headers we want. So I'm gonna go ahead and to our client here, I will add a couple of custom headers. And it's as simple as just Oh, it's yeah, that should be good. And I realized I added single apostrophes instead of double. So similarly, we want to add the API key as well, right? So let me just go ahead and look at our well, okay, that's the app key. I'm gonna copy paste the values from here directly because it's a little convenient. But for now, let me just at least add our headers here. I will make sure to add environment variables before I push this code to GitHub, because after that I'm gonna reset my API key. But for the meantime, in the meantime, if anyone wants to try out, you can always go ahead do that. Make your own little credentials, or if you're looking at the screen, sure, why not? Probably going to be very difficult to copy of it, but so this might just be a more convenient option. We've got our API key and our response, and our headers ready. So now it's time to send in a little HTTP request. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna send over an HTTP request to our to the API that we have. Right. So we've got our entire we've got the API here. So I'll tell you what. Let me go ahead and let's convert this well, word meaning. That's what I'll call it for now. All right. And we need to read the Oxford Dictionary response here to get that information back. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna keep this as dynamic again, just because it's an entire object structure that I'm not sure of. So we're just getting this as a dynamic object. The other thing you can actually do here is, we've got this entire JSON, right? So I could always go ahead and create another class on the basis of this using JSON to C sharp. It's a pretty convenient tool that we have. I could just go ahead, paste this JSON here, and you know get back the entire structure here. So if I convert this, I can get back a full class for this response that I have, and this will convert exactly to what I have. So instead of playing around with dynamic, I'll just go ahead and I'll have a separate class of my own. I'll tell you what, this might just be a better option in the meantime. So I'll go ahead. I'll create a new class here. Um, Oxford Dictionary response. .cs. And I'll paste this entire thing here. What we want is Well, I'm gonna call this. The class is called Oxford Dictionary Response. That's what it is called. So that's there. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add this to our namespace that we have. Seems like we've got a few errors at the end. That might just have to do with, yeah, we didn't have the right references at the start, but it's okay. We're good to go. So we've got our entire class for the Oxford Dictionary response here, and I can actually, instead of using dynamic now, um, go ahead and get the response as well, the type that we've created. So instead of having, you know, a dynamic class, we now just have the entire object saved, so we can play around with that and get the meaning back. So if I now want to go and I want to just check for the meaning of whatever word we sent in, I can do that. So let's try out the log once and make sure that we're getting the information back in the way we want, right? And for that, I want to make sure that I'm actually checking the details that we've sent in. So if I look at this entire structure, let me go. We've got the word, and I want to check the results once. Is what I want to do. So within the result, we look for the meaning. Tell you what, let me just quickly go ahead, go back to Postman. That way I can just find where the meaning is saved, and that'll just make navigation so much easier for me. So within results, within entries, we've got etymologies, and we've got notes, and we've got definitions here. So within results, lexical entries. Within that, again, we've got senses and then definitions. Quite the structure. Results, lexical entries. Sheesh. Just gonna go back to. Hmm. We actually want the meaning as well, right? We don't just. Oh, I need to go back and refer. It's quite a big API there, isn't it? Got results. We've got. I hope this was in lexical entries. If I'm not wrong. Damn, I need to keep referring back. Yeah, within lexical entries, we've then got entries and then senses. Wait, we had entries directly in results? Wow, this is such a complex response. I have no idea whether this will actually work. Seems like all of these are, we've got senses within entries, lexical entries, the results. Yeah, I think this should be good, but we want to make sure that we've tested this once as well. Seems like I'm getting a little error here, and I'm not sure why. Go ahead and let me just read a string for now, and I'll just deserialize that. It's the same namespace, so it should be detectable. That shouldn't be the issue. Actually, not sure why I'm getting this error at this point. Might just have not been saved. Yeah, building out has its quirks at times, but at least now we're ready to test this for once. So let me test this and hope things are working. Oh my god, I see what I did there. That was the entire error. The meantime, looking at questions. Yes, you can call APIs and desktop apps as well. That should be all right. I'm currently working on a local server. I'm on my desktop. I'm not deployed anywhere. And yeah, we're getting the meaning back and we're getting the word back. So yeah, this works. Awesome. We do have one more step to this, and that is to text it back to me. Right? I mean, we've got the word, we've got the meaning, we've connected these two APIs, and then there's a third that I had in mind, with which we can try it out. And it seems like there was an error here that came up. Anyway, I'm gonna look into that error. Chances are what happened was that the word wasn't exactly that didn't have a meaning. Probably that's where things got caught. I don't have error handling at the moment, but I that's something that I will look into after we're through with this front. So we can discuss more on that. The third step was to kind of work with Twilio and you know get well, Twilio in. So in this case, I'll actually have to play around a little with um, environment variables because I'm gonna have trouble if if I don't do that for now. So in the meantime, then let me do one thing. I'll try and shift our app ID to environment variables even here, and let's see if it's all right. And if that's the case, I'll do the same for my Twilio details and my personal number. I'll have to try it out once and see if this is working all right. It ideally should, because that's the whole purpose of this failure. So if this works, it would mean that we're able to get back environment variables, and I'll just shift all my keys there once by just taking VS Code off my screen for a second. Wait, where is there an error? Did I forget to stop running this? Yeah, that's what happened. I forgot to stop running the API. We can actually have some breaks here to check and see if we're getting information. So, at this point, if I add, it's showing me all my local variables. So I can see that my word here is appetite. And we've got the meaning. It's going to be a big one. We've got a result. Yeah, looks like we're good to go. Let me just take away these breakpoints for now. I'm going to continue this over. But we've got our word and we've got our meaning. So we're good on this front. Yeah, those environment variables work. So I'm going to shift all my environment variable ones and take this away and add my Twilio as well. Uh, that's ex- that's exactly why I want to take my I'll take my screen off when I add my Twilio details here, because I've been using those in other projects as well, and I want to make sure that I don't actually end up losing them before by the time the session is over, because I made that mistake in the past. So yeah, but I'll tell you what, for credits, I know we can reset them, absolutely, but it's just I have multiple projects running and I don't want to reset them right now. So that's the only thing. So I mean, we can always save them here, and I can have my thing. Plus, it's not just the keys, right? With Twilio, I'm gonna keep my personal phone number for testing, and you can do that whenever you're building. So I want to make sure that I'm not just giving away my personal phone number on stream as well. Yeah, Oxford details I'm not too worried about. So even if they're on screen, that's okay. But I'll tell you what, I'm gonna take my screen off for a second now, because I wanna add my Twilio details as well. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do that. But in the meantime, if you have any queries that you want to throw in, please, please, please feel free to do that. This is definitely a good point for you to send in any queries you might have. How's the session been for you so far? Are you able to understand what I'm trying to do, or are you facing any troubles? Facing troubles, please don't hesitate in letting me know. I would be happy to help out and just clarify any doubts you might have. Thank you so much for that. Definitely means a lot to me. Just gonna add all the details at this moment together. Like I'll just add my Twilio number and my personal numbers in there as well in the meantime. So I don't have to worry too much about that, and I'll set those um, up. Mansi, if you're having troubles with Azure, don't worry too much about that. Um, the API part is the one that's necessary to understand. I'm just live building a solution as well, and I'll tell you what. I'll send in a little resource for Azure functions, for timer trigger Azure functions. So this is the documentation, and you can always check it out when you like in your meantime. So I've sent that into the chat as well. But the priority is to understand how we worked with those two APIs and connected them. So don't worry too much if you had trouble understanding that. Almost done. I'm just creating variables for myself right now, making sure that you know I don't have to worry about anything. And I'm just getting these environment variables. Any other queries in the meantime? I am ready to go. Bringing back my screen. So I'm gonna do one thing, and I'm just gonna create my word of the day message already as well. Okay, and that's basically gonna be word of the day. The day is and this is where I'm gonna add my word from earlier. A random word means long one. Okay, so our message body is set. Now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and have Twilio running, right? That's the main one. So for that, I'm gonna install Twilio's SDK this time, which is probably the first case of us playing with an SDK here. Now, the command I'm adding .NET add package Twilio is the equivalent of an npm uh, install. Okay, so that's essentially what it is, or a pip install. That's what we're doing. We're just adding the Twilio SDK here. Whenever we add one of a package to .NET project, it should be available in the CS proj. Like we've got the Twilio SDK here, so that's always visible. Right. Now we've got the Twilio package. We can actually go ahead and start using Twilio functions. So the first one, here this is gonna initialize the Twilio client for us. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw in our Twilio account SID and Twilio auth token, which act as a user name and password in this case. Ready. That's what your account ID and your app ID and app key, or account ID and auth token. That's what they're doing essentially. Um, Next thing, we're gonna create our message on Twilio. Okay, and for that we're gonna create a message resource for which we use Twilio's REST API, which has now been added here. Probably what this little function is doing is it's making a request in a way that we had, because SDK is essentially bring together a set of all the resources you need, whether it's um, models, response and request models, or whatever you need to actually perform these actions. So chances are there is one of these commands running behind there, which we'll try and explore and see if we can get that information. As soon as I'm done creating as well. So I'm gonna add the details now. The message body is that message body we created earlier. The number from which we make our phone call is basically going to be a Twilio types phone number, that is Twilio number. And similarly, the two number is going to be my personal phone number because I can only test it on my personal phone number. Right. So I've got that there. And I'm going to bring the log back. If this entire thing works the way it is supposed to, I should get a message on my personal number on my phone. So the attempt is to get that for me. So I'm just gonna run this function and hope that this function works and I get a text. And if I get a text, I'll show it on screen. I sincerely hope this works. Um, I'm assuming we got a word which wasn't discoverable in. I'll tell you what. Let me just put a little check here. Um, I'm just adding a little check for if there is a success status code only then will it add something. Yeah, this happens all the time. Sometimes it's just one of those words is not gonna have, uh, you know, it may not have, well, a meaning available. But I wanna first just like try out and see if it's at least working, and after that we can always add more checks and on functionality. So if I go here and I go into word meaning, we have our word calzone. Okay, not bad. And let us. Okay, we have a result, right? We can see a result here. We've got an entry. So we ideally should have a definition as well, and we have a definition. So I should get a message if everything goes well here, because this function and this variable, it's all there. Yeah, I don't need to check on that. Okay, so we did get a word. It does work. Let me bring my. See, I'm gonna have to figure out why that's failing there. It might be that a second word or a second call is where it kind of got messed up. But if suppose it's just me, I got a word back. Just hoping it zooms. Yep, that word's coming. The word of the day is there. We've got the word. Yeah. So this function worked. Now it's really a matter of error handling. So I'm gonna try and do some. I'll see if I wanna do some. But in the meantime, the new minute came and we're again seeing a little error. So it might just be that the API has some limiting. But in the meantime, the function works. We got our word of the day. Yay! Awesome. So I'll tell you what we could sit and debug, but we've got our connected APIs. So in the meantime, I will instead go ahead, just maybe push this to my GitHub. I'm not deploying it for the time being, just pushing it, right? So that at least the code that we worked on, it's all visible, it's all there. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna type up command create project on live stream. Always fun to do that one. Main, and we'll publish to a public repository. So if I open this on GitHub, my link here, it's visible. You can check out this code if you want. It's all in there, and I've hidden all the keys, so none of that is in there either. Bottom line, this worked. This works well. So you can always check it out. Now, what else is left? What else do we have? Do we Let me see what's happening, what's up with submission, right? I want to make sure I'm checked in. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'll see if we have a submission link here for us right now. All right. Let me log into my dev post once. That's what I want to do for a second. Um, Once again, in the meantime, any questions so far? Any doubts? Any issues? Anything? Because I know we had a lot happening. So that's why I want to ask. If there's any questions, any problems, I want to be able to help out. If not, I'm just checking the website once for our submission details, and I'll figure out where we can submit if there is a submission here. We might have some tasks for the Twilio API, which is kind of where this is valid as well. Um, yeah, okay. I mean, I worked with the Twilio API to see a point for that. That is a submission challenge, aside from this being an activity. So I've shared that dev post link in, and if there's anyone who's participating, I've shared that link in there. So you can always go ahead and add it to the dev post. So I'm just gonna bring my screen back up. Working solo, let's coach website, yada yada yada. Oops, wait, what? Ah, rush that. So I saw day three, and I just showing how weak you can submit. On day three, I did notice that the Twilio API challenge is there, right? We've got quite a few of these. If you tried new language, it's always valid to submit. Um, but in the meantime, I did have see this little challenge, explore the Twilio API, which is what we did right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create a submission and show you how you can do so as well. Right, like if for example, I'll tell you what, I can actually get the YouTube back for this. If I go to the MLA channel, I can actually get the YouTube recording. That's not a mandate by any means, but yeah. So for now, I'm gonna just write connect. What are we calling this? Random word of the day. SMS. And I'll add GHW share 2022. Serverless function that messages a random word to you every day. So that's essentially what we created. I just have to change the cron there, but I'll quickly do that. Right. So we've got a little pitch here. Um, Video. I do have this live stream as the video, so I can always show that. I'll add .NET here, Azure functions, Oxford. So I'm going to remove these sections because they're not relevant for now. So, it's a good idea to describe. Using with .NET 6 along with the random word API and Oxford dictionaries. So that's a good enough description. But okay, also another thing, whenever you're submitting, make sure you put in the GitHub repo for your project. That's going to be important. And save and continue. In this case, because there was the Twilio challenge, I can add it there. And it seems like I can't find it now at the moment. I have no idea why. Now I'm confused for a sec. If it was a new language for you, however, you can always go with that option as well, that you've explored a new language, and then you can save and continue. Right. So if you save and continue here, you can then select terms and conditions and submit project. So that's a valid submission. All right. And I believe that should help. You're good to go. In the meantime, I'll definitely look into what happened with Explore the Twilio API. But yeah, we've got a few good submissions here, so should be good. I think what might have happened is that okay, I'll actually have to check and see what happened. It might have been that we have two copies of this instead of a separate one, but I'll definitely check in with the team on that. Either way, that's about it from me. We had a fun little app that we built, and we talked and we saw how you can connect to APIs and use them together. So I definitely hope this was insightful. It let you understand a little bit about APIs, if not too much. At least get your interest in, because with APIs you can actually consume a lot of different information and solutions and knowledge that you may not have to build, and they actually make life in hackathons so much easier because there's so much work that you might that they can take away from you, right? There's a lot that's been pre-built that works well that you can actually leverage to build amazing solutions and on problems. So APIs are definitely very very helpful, and I hope to see more of you build your own APIs or uh, at least consume them, if not build yourself. So yeah, thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the rest of Global Hack Week. Share as well. See you all. Bye.